All right, we're going to start reading Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred Taylor. We talked a little bit about the time period and the background, and now let's get started. As we read, we're going to annotate. So we're not going to do this the whole book, but this first chapter or so, I want you to listen and follow along with me and make annotations in your book, right? Eventually you'll be doing this on your own, but as we get started and learn how to do it, I want to make sure that we're working together so you have an idea. Now you know from what we learned about short stories and novellas that we're going to start off with the exposition, which is going to give us the setting. It's going to let us know who the main characters are and a little background. So that's usually what you come across first in a novel. The setting's going to be much more detailed, so it's going to take some more time to unravel and figure it out. Chapter 1. Little man, would you come on? You keep it up and you're going to make us late. My youngest brother paid no attention to me. Grasping more firmly his newspaper-wrapped notebook and his tin-can lunch of cornbread and oil sausages, he continued to concentrate on the dusty road. All right. So little man is one of the brothers. It's his youngest brother. I need a different color. It's not going to show up. Dusty road. A little hint of the setting. He lagged several feet behind my other brothers, Stacy and Christopher John, and me, attempting to keep the rusty Mississippi dust from swelling with each step and drifting back upon his shiny black shoes and the cuffs of his corduroy pants by lifting each foot high before setting it gently down again. Always meticulously, that's a good word, neat, 6-year-old little man never allowed dirt or tears or stains to mar anything he owned. Today was no exception. All right, so we have the narrator, little man, who's 6, right? 6, Stacy, who was a brother, and Christopher John, who we're going to write CJ. Sounds like they're walking somewhere dusty. It sounds like they're dressed up, too, because it's talking about his shiny black shoes. You keep it up and make us late for school. Aha, they're going to school. Mama's going to wear you out. Wear you out. Wear you out is an expression that means you're going to get in trouble, usually like spanked. I threatened, pulling with exasperation at the high collar of the Sunday dress Mama made me wear for the first day of school. So now we know the narrator is a girl. So it's a girl and her 3 brothers. As if that event were something special. It seemed to me that showing up at school at all on a bright August-like October morning, made for running the cool forest trails and wading barefoot in the forest pond, was concession enough. Sunday clothing was asking too much. Christopher John and Stacy were not too pleased about the clothing, or school either. Only little man, just beginning his school career, found the prospects of both intriguing. Y'all go ahead and get dirty if y'all wanna, he replied without even looking up from his studied steps. Me, I'm gonna stay clean. I bet your mama's gonna clean you, keep it up, I grumbled. Ah, Cassie, leave 'em be, Stacy admonished. Ooh, another good word, admonished. Frowning and kicking testily at the road. I ain't said nothing but... Stacy cut me a wicked look, and I grew silent. His disposition had been irritatingly sour lately. If I hadn't known the cause of it, I could have forgotten very easily that he was, at 12, bigger than I, and that I had promised Mama to arrive at school looking clean and ladylike. Shoot, I mumbled finally, unable to restrain myself from further comment. It ain't my fault you got to be in Mama's class this year. All right, so that's why it sits up here. It's talking about Stacy being irritating lately and sour. She said she knows the cause of it, and it sounds like the cause is they're in Mama's class. So Stacy's going to have his mother as a teacher. So the mom is a teacher, and Stacy is in the class. And I can't remember, it told us, did it tell us which one was oldest? Stacy's 12. Stacy's frown deepened, and he jammed his fist into his pockets, but said nothing. Christopher John, walking between Stacy and me, glanced uneasily at both of us, but did not interfere. A short, round boy of 7, he's short, He's round 7. He took little interest in troublesome things, preferring to remain on good terms with everyone. Okay, it sounds like that makes him very different than the narrator and Stacy. It sounds like the narrator up here, it sounded like the narrator was thinking about getting in a fight with her brother, but this one just likes to kind of chill out and be calm. Yet he was always sensitive to others, and now, shifting the handle of his lunch can from his right hand to his right wrist, and his smudged notebook from his left hand to his left armpit, he stuffed his free hands into his pockets and attempted to make his face as moody as Stacy's and as cranky as mine. But after a few moments he seemed to forget that he was supposed to be grouchy and began whistling cheerfully. There was little that could make Christopher John unhappy for very long, not even the thought of school. So I think that's important too. It's little that could make him unhappy. So he's a real happy, easygoing kid. I tugged again at my collar and dragged my feet in the dust, allowing it to sift back onto my socks and shoes like gritty red snow. There's a simile there. I hated the dress and the shoes. There was little I could do in a dress, and as for shoes, they imprisoned freedom-loving feet accustomed to the feel of the warm earth. I think that's really funny. That shows that she has kind of a sarcastic sense of humor. Also shows that she's a tomboy. Sounds like even though she's a girl, she likes to do boy stuff. Cassie, stop that! Stacy snapped at the dust as the dust billowed in a swirling clouds around my feet. Oh, now we know the narrator's name. It's Cassie. I looked up sharply, ready to protest. Christopher John's whistling increased to a... Sorry about that. Okay, back to this. Christopher John's whistling increased to a ruckus, nervous shrill, and grudgingly I let the matter drop and trudged along in moody silence. My brother's growing as pensively quiet as I. So that means she's thinking about things. Like this nervous shrill is a good description there. Before us, as the narrow, sun-splotched road wound like a lazy red serpent, dividing the high forest bank of quiet old trees on the left from the cotton field, forested by giant green and purple stalks on the right. Well, first of all, we have a great simile in here. We're comparing the road to a lazy red serpent, the way it winds around. The other important thing here, this is a really good description of the land where they live. Land description. Old trees. A barbed wire fence ran the length of the deep field. Make sure you know what barbed wire is. Stretching eastward for over 1/4 of a mile until it met the sloping green pasture that signaled the end of our family's 400 acres. Okay, the way she's saying that, their family owns 400 acres. And we already know the main character is black, and we know the time period. Is it normal during this time period for a black family to own 400 acres? 400 acres. An ancient oak tree on the slope, visible even now, was the official dividing mark between Logan land and the beginning of a dense forest. Beyond the protective fencing of the forest, vast farming fields, worked by a multitude of sharecropping families, covered 2/3 of a 10-square-mile plantation. That was Harlan Granger land. Okay, so it sounds like the setting is around some place called Harlan Granger land. Lots of sharecropping. Once our land had been Granger land too, but the Grangers had sold it during Reconstruction to a Yankee for tax money. Remember, Reconstruction is after the Civil War, when slaves had been freed and they were rebuilding. A Yankee is someone from the North. In 1887, when the land was up for sale again, Grandpa had bought 200 acres of it. And in 1918, after the first 200 acres had been paid off, he bought another 200. It was good, rich land, much of it still virgin forest, and there was no debt on half of it. But there was a mortgage on the 200 acres bought in 1918, and there were taxes on the full 400. And for that For the past 3 years, there had not been enough money from the cotton to pay both and live on too. Right. So it sounds like the grandpa was a good businessman. He'd bought 400 acres. Half of it's totally paid off. The other half, they still owe money to the bank, so they're having to pay for it still. And the cotton doesn't give them enough money to pay the taxes and the mortgage. That was why Papa had gone to work for the railroad. So the dad works for the railroad. In 1930, the price of cotton dropped. And so in the spring of 1931, remember the Depression, Papa set out looking for work, going as far north as Memphis and as far south as the Delta country. He had gone west, too, into Louisiana. It was there he found work laying track for the railroad. He worked the remainder of the year away from us, not returning until the deep winter, when the ground was cold and barren. The following spring, after the planting was finished, he did the same. Now it was 1933. There's more of our setting. And Papa was still in Louisiana, laying track. Giving us more information on the setting. I asked him once why he had to go away, why the land was so important. He took my hand and said in his quiet way, "Look out there, Cassie girl. All that belongs to you. You ain't never had to live on nobody's place but your own. And long as I live and the family survives, you'll never have to. That's important. You may not understand that now, but one day you will. Then you'll see." I looked at Papa strangely when he said that, for I knew that all the land did not belong to me. Some of it belonged to Stacy, Christopher John, and Little Man, not to mention the part that belonged to Big Ma, Mama, and Uncle Hammer, Papa's older brother, who lived in Chicago. So here's other family. Extended family, we call it. But Papa never divided the land in his mind. It was simply Logan land. For it he would work the long, hot summer pounding steel. Mama would teach and run the farm. Big Ma, in her 60s, that must be the grandmother, would work like a woman of 20 in the fields and keep the house, and the boys and I would wear threadbare clothing, washed to dishwater color, but always the taxes and the mortgage would be paid. Papa said that one day I would understand. I wondered. When the fields ended and the Granger forest fanned both sides of the road with long overhanging branches, a tall, emaciated-looking boy popped suddenly from a forest trail and swung a thin arm around Stacy. It was T.J. Avery, the new character. His younger brother Claude emerged a moment later, smiling weakly as if it pained him to do so. Neither boy had on shoes, and their Sunday clothing, patched and worn, hung loosely upon their frail frames. The Avery family sharecropped the Granger land. Okay, so it sounds like these guys are very poor. They're sharecroppers, and we already know about that, but it also talks about how they didn't have shoes, and their clothes were all patched up. "Well," said T.J. jauntily, good word, swinging into step with Stacy, "here we go again, starting another school year." "Yeah," sighed Stacy. "Oh, man, don't look so down," T.J. said cheerfully. "Your Mom is really one great teacher. I should know." He certainly should. He had failed Mama's class last year and was now returning for a second try. "Shoot, you can say that," exclaimed Stacy. "You don't have to spend all day in a classroom with your Mama." "Look on the bright side," said T.J. "Just think of the advantages you've got. You'll be learning all sorts of stuff for the rest of us." He smiled slyly. "Like what's on all them tests?" Stacy thrust T.J.'s arms from his shoulders. "If that's what you think, you don't know Mama." So right there is a little hint. Sounds like his Mama is a strong woman. Very principled. "Ain't no need getting mad," T.J. replied, undaunted. "Just an idea." He was quiet for a moment, then announced, "I bet you I could give y'all an earful about that burning last night." Sounds like an important event happened last night. "Burning? What burning?" asked Stacy. "Man, don't y'all know nothing? The berries burning. I thought y'all's grandmother went over there last night to see about them." Of course, we knew that Big Ma had gone to a sick house last night. She was good at medicines, and people often called her instead of doctors.